Hey, if you got your Bible, your phone, your device, and I hope you do, turn with me to Joshua chapter 11. If you haven't been with us the last handful of weeks, we have just been simply walking through the book of Joshua, unpacking a little bit of what it has for us. Joshua, the sixth book in our Bible, and there have been a lot of incredible truths that we have looked at, a lot of incredible stories that we have seen over the last handful of weeks. Today's gonna look a little bit different than maybe most of our weeks do, and that's because today we're gonna get real practical and talk very seriously about this word that we call sin. Now sin is a word that probably doesn't come up a whole lot in your everyday conversation. It's kind of one of those Bible words. It's one of those words that you just kind of, like we all kind of go, I think we understand it, but do we really understand it? So I kind of want to start by asking the question, what is sin? And I read a ton of different definitions over the last week about how do you define sin? And maybe my favorite one was this. The definition of sin is failure to love God and failure to love others. Now, one of the more popular definitions that you hear kind of going around is that sin can be defined as like missing the mark. As if to say, you're an archer, you have a bullseye that you're trying to hit, and if you pull the bow back and you shoot the arrow, like if you miss the bullseye, you've missed the mark, you've kind of sinned. And I think that conveys much of what sin is, but I don't think it conveys everything because that implies that we can actually hit the mark. But the truth of the matter is that no matter who you are, no matter how skilled of an archer you might be, and you might think you're the best, but no matter how far you pull the bow back, no matter how much you release, like not a single one of us is able to hit the target. There is only one who can hit the mark, and that is Jesus. And lucky for us, his perfect shot becomes our perfect shot. But the reality is, I don't think we say this out loud, but most of us, most of the time, don't give a whole lot of thought to this idea of sin. We don't give the seriousness with which I think it deserves, or our mindset is simply like, I'll just do better next time, or something like, I'll just make a different choice next time, but right now I'm gonna do this, or like, it's not that big of a deal, or something that sometimes we'll just say, well, there's grace, and so it doesn't really matter what I do. Now, hear me out. There is absolutely a ton of grace. Thank the Lord that there is grace upon grace upon grace. At the same time, the Bible speaks very clearly about sin and how destructive it is to our lives. So let me do this. Let me set the stage for Joshua chapter 11. Joshua can essentially be broken down into two parts. We have been looking at the first part, and then starting next week and following, we'll look at the second part. The first half is what we've been talking about. Essentially, Israel has been able to flee Egypt, and now they're, after 40 years of wandering in the desert, they're finally entering into the promised land. They're finally getting to tackle all the things that like they enter in. They've tackled Jericho, they've tackled Ai, they've like over and over and over again, like we see, like they're entering in, right? The second half of the book is now about Joshua dividing the land into the different parts that these 9.5 tribes will live in, right? I say 9.5 tribes. Remember, Israel is made up of 12 tribes. Think of like the 50 states, Israel's 12 tribes. 2.5 of them are gonna stay on the other side of the Jordan. So they've crossed the Jordan River. They're gonna stay on the other side of the Jordan River. The other 9.5, they're gonna be finally living in this land that we call the Promised Land. And so the second half of the book of Joshua, chapters 13 through 19, are essentially the tribe of Naphtali is gonna live here. The tribe of Dan is gonna live here. The tribe of, like over and over and over and over and over again. And so we're not gonna look at all of that over the next few weeks. But I do want to give us a little indication that this is what we're at. We have the first part of the book, and now we have the second part of the book. And for our purposes today, I want us to see the conclusion of God giving the people the promised land and why God is so serious about Israel not cohabitating with others. All right, that's my hope this morning. So Joshua chapter 11, I'm going to read these first 6 verses. Let's see if I cannot butcher all of these names. When King Jabin of Hazor heard the news, he sent a message to King Jobab of Madon, the kings of Shimron and Akshaph, and the kings of the north of the hill country of Arabah, south of Chinnereth, the Judean foothills. and the slopes of Dor in the west, the Canaanites in the east and west, the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites in the hill country, and the Hivites at the foot of Himron in the land of Mizpah. They went out with all their armies, a multitude as numerous as the sand on the seashore, along with a vast number of horses and chariots. All the kings joined forces. They came together, camped near the waters of Merom, and attacked Israel. The Lord said to Joshua, "Do not be afraid of them, for at this time tomorrow I will cause all them to be killed before Israel." Okay, if you felt like you have heard this before, if you've been with us the last few weeks, if you've like, man, I've heard this, like this sounds very familiar, it's because it is very familiar. You have heard it before. Last week, we learned about the kings from the south trying to come together and fight against Israel. This week, it's the kings from the north now who are coming together. And again, we talked about this, but I just want to highlight it again. How stubborn do you have to be? How arrogant do you have to be? How me-centric do you have to be to have heard all about what God has done? All of it. Jericho, Ai. They've also heard about the grace that God has shown to the Gibeonites and to Rahab. And you hear all of that, and your mindset is still, you know what, let's fight. Like, let's see what we can do. In fact, Jabin, in our passage this morning, he tries to get more of these groups together than even last week, King Adonai-Zedek. He tries to get more people together. Yet, Joshua is still told, don't be afraid, for this time tomorrow, I will cause all of them to be killed. So let's chat. We have talked about this briefly over our time in Joshua, because here's the question that I think so many of us ask when we read about a lot of this in the book of Joshua. Why is God so against these other peoples? Why is God so adamant that Joshua and Israel do not associate? Like why is he there? Like, why over and over again, every week we come in here, we read about a group that Israel's going in and attacking and essentially kicking out of the promised land, annihilating them. Like, why is God so about that? And here's why. Because God knows that it won't be the righteousness of his people that invade these other groups that are currently living in the promised land, but it will be the sinfulness, the paganness, the wickedness, the vileness of these groups that invade and destroy Israel. Why should we take sin so seriously? Because God takes sin so seriously. So here's what I want to do with my time this morning. I simply want to unpack and just throw some things out to us, some areas of our life that I think maybe we should think through the seriousness of these things, but I think many of us don't give them a second thought. I want to look at some possible, and I use that word possible on purpose, some possible areas of sinfulness in your life, because my hope this morning is that you are reflective inside. Like that you can really take a good hard look at your life and go, is this an area of sinfulness in my life? And the answer that you come to might be no, but it also might be an area in your life that no one has ever pushed at before, or maybe you've never thought at before, that I just want us to kind of just be able to go, maybe, like, is this something I've ever thought through? So I have 4 different areas that I just kind of want to throw out there, and then I want to simply ask, are these areas that I think many of us, like, the world has saturated themselves into the church, and we don't even realize how destructive some of these areas can be. All right, so that's the plan. All right, here's the first one, how we talk. How we talk to each other, how we talk about each other, how we talk about anything, everything. Ephesians 4:29 says, no foul language should come from your mouth, but only what is good for building up someone in need, so that it gives grace to those who hear. If you don't have this verse memorized, the way that I memorized it was let no unwholesome talk come out of your mouth. That's how I remember it back in the NIV. If you don't have this verse memorized, or at least know, like, this should be a massive verse. Okay, I'm not gonna try to get political at all, but the way that our culture today talks to and about other people is absolutely insane. Like, from both sides of the aisle. Like, the way that conversations happen when you disagree with someone, the culture that we live in, if you live according to how it behaves, man, shame on us. Like there used to be a time and a day where you could disagree with someone and you could have good conversation about why you disagree with them without attacking every aspect of their character and bringing every aspect of their life into the conversation. But today, we live in a culture where, listen, let me put it this way. Again, not trying to get political, but if I said something pro-Trump this morning, pro-Republican Party, the left on this side over here would be going, how dare you? How could you do that? Are you kidding me? Do you know about ... Just because I said one thing. On the flip side, if I said up here, there's something that I agree with from the left, from the Democratic Party, all my Republican friends over here would be going, how dare you? Like, it's not possible. Don't you know? And we just throw grenades back and forth at each other all the time. We don't listen to one another. We don't hear each other out. We just talk nonsense to each other all day long. Listen, no matter how angry you are, no matter how much you might disagree with someone else and their particular point of view, no matter how right you think you are and how wrong they might be, that person is created in the image and likeness of God. So the person that you might disagree with the most in your life, I just want you to say to yourself right now, they're created in the image and likeness of God. They have his fingerprint on their life. The carelessness and the nonchalantness with which we talk about others should not be what defines us. And while I'm here, let me get on my high horse for just a minute. Let's talk profanity for just a minute. Somewhere along the way, we have curse words, cursing. It's just become okay in our culture. Like we just throw words out. And honestly, when I hear people, I'm just like, how lazy do you have to be? Be a little bit more articulate with how you talk. Communicate a little bit better than trying to use 4-letter words. It's just laziness. And then there's also something that has happened inside even Christian circles where it's almost like a rite of passage to start cursing, or it's a way to show you that I'm not like this Pharisee, or it's a rite of passage where we just start cursing, and it's like, really? Now listen, my middle son's not here, but if we talk about language a lot in our family, and we how we treat one another and how we talk to one another. Don't go too far the other way, where if you hear one curse word, you start to question somebody's salvation. But at the same time, how we talk to one another should absolutely matter. The older I get, the more that I just want to build people up. This is one of the reasons why one of our values, so we have 6 values here at Radiant Church. One of our values is intentional honor. The reason why that is one of our values is because we live in a culture that does not honor one another well. My oldest was playing baseball yesterday, and one of the coaches was there. And after one of the kids would make a great play, there would be crickets, there would be silence. And the coach would pause, time out. So-and-so just made a fantastic play. Why are you not cheering them on? Why are you not celebrating? And then he comes over and he's like, man, how crazy is it that the thing that I have to get onto our students the most is to honor one another, to celebrate one another, to say hey, well done, you did amazing there. It's always a competition. And so we shy away from celebrating others. What would it be like if we honored one another? With our words, what we post on social media, how we talk. And the reason why I think this is a bigger deal than we make it out to be is because I think it really reveals what's going on in our hearts. Here's how I think this plays out in our culture today. I think we can hide behind sarcasm. I think we can hide behind, I'm just joking. I think we can hide behind, I'm just kidding. When in reality, if you were to be honest with yourself, what you just said about somebody else is actually what you believe. But yet we hide so that we don't have to deal with the anger, the pride, the bitterness, the truth of really what's going on inside. What if we took serious how we speak to one another? You see, we like to think, culture's not invading me. It won't, but I just wonder if how we talk, it's invading into us more than we realize. All right, here's the second area. Not just how we talk, but also what we watch. Matthew chapter 6, verse 22 and 23. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. So if the light within you is darkness, how deep is that darkness? Okay. We live in a very visual culture. Any image that you want to see, you can see it. Any video you want to find, you can find it. And then you can hide all of it from everyone. Like I'm convinced that some of us spend more time trying to hide the things that we're not supposed to see than we spend tons and tons and tons of time on it. And then just so you can know how destructive this can be in our culture today. Yes, I'm talking about pornography when I talk about the things that we're supposed to see, but not just pornography, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But 69% of men admit to pornography use. 40% of women admit to it. Here's another one. The United States streams and views more pornography in our country than any other country around. By the time kids are in their early teens, not late teens, not 17, 18, 19, early teens, 13, 14, 15, 93% of boys have been exposed to it. 62% of girls have been exposed to it. To say that our culture doesn't have a problem with pornography would be foolish at best, unaware of the destruction it causes at worst. Like we have to be willing to just go step back and go, man, this is a massive, massive, massive problem in our culture today. That we are so consumed by wanting to view images and view videos that we have no business needing to view and look at. And yet we work so hard at hiding it. And listen, let me just, if you have a struggle with that here today, this isn't like a shame on you. This is more of like I want you to understand and know the seriousness that sin can cause in your life. Because you think like it's just this area over here and like, oh, it doesn't impact other areas. And I just need to say that's a lie from the enemy, that if this is a struggle in your life, it is absolutely gonna wiggle its way into other areas of your life as well. It's just going to. But let me take this conversation just a little bit further, because I can just hear some of us this morning going, well, I'm not viewing inappropriate images, so I'm fine. And if that's your thought right now, I think I wanna say, you're proving the point on the reason we're even talking through these areas. That there are many places in our lives that we have stopped seeing as destructive, when in reality, culture has invaded you more than you ever realize. Okay, so let me share a principle that Caroline and I live by. And listen, as I say some of this over the next 10 minutes or so, I am not trying to prescribe something to you, that you have to do what I do. I'm not trying to do that at all. I'm trying to describe something of this is how we try to navigate some of these areas. So here's a principle that Caroline and I live by. We have 3 boys. I got a 12-year-old, 11-year-old, and 8-year-old. And so, of course, there are certain things that I think Caroline and I can watch that the boys have no business watching. Yet, before we watch that, this is the question we ask. If we would not let the boys watch this, why should we watch it? Now, sometimes the answer is, okay, we can watch this because we can understand the nuances of what we are watching more than the boys can, right? Like, can we just admit, like, there are certain things that as you get older, you can just understand that not everything is quite as black and white as we like to make it. And there's some nuance into some conversations. So sometimes we ask that question and it's like, listen, we can understand the nuances of that a little bit. Sometimes the answer is, if we watch this, it will give us a better understanding of what's happening in our culture today. Like there are some shows that have been popular in our culture that I'm like, I wanna watch that because I wanna know what our people are watching. Right? Like I want to understand this a little bit more, but sometimes the answer is we have no business of watching that, even if there is nothing wrong with the show, wrong with what the movie. Like it's just not helpful or it's just not beneficial in any way, shape, or form. So let me just give you some examples from our lives. You can take with this what you want, but this is just me. We do not watch any shows where there's just gonna be a bunch of ladies walking around in bikinis, any beach type shows. We just don't do it. We just don't. We also don't watch a lot of shows and this is me, like, I don't like watching shows where there's cheating upon cheating upon cheating. Like, man, I love the vows of marriage to death do us part. And when it's just celebrated on the screen, I'm like, why am I watching this? Because the reality is I know that can infiltrate me more than I think it can. So we just don't do it. There's certain topics of conversations. Listen, the show, there's just some things of conversations I don't want to spend the next 30 minutes or the next hour listening to. That could be crude humor. That could just be inappropriate innuendos. It could be multiple types of things that I'm just going, I don't want to let sin get a foothold in my life. And I would be naive to think that if I just continue to input, what did Matthew chapter 6 say? The eye is the lamp of the body. I don't just want to continue to view things and act as if it will never impact me whatsoever. I think I'm being a little naive. Like, here's my hope in the discussion, that you will at least consider, is what I'm watching worth it? Can you just ask that question? Is what I'm watching worth it? And the answer might surprise you if you actually start asking yourself the question. When you start asking yourself the question, you start to realize there's a lot of filth that I let through my eyes. There's a lot of stuff that I have no business viewing. All right, here's number 3. Who we surround ourselves with. I want you to consider this. Like, if the reason why God is asking the Israelites to remove all of these nations from the promised land, one of the reasons has got to be at least who the Israelites are surrounding themselves with. So this is a phrase that we use with our Salt Company students quite a bit. You're the sum total of your 5 closest friends. Here's what we mean by that. You show me your 5 closest friends, and then let me spend a week or 2 with them. Let me see their priorities. Let me see how they talk. I can see what they care about. I can see what they value. And listen, even if you and I aren't very close, even if you and I don't know each other super well, if I spent a month with your 5 closest friends, I can pretty much tell you what you prioritize, what you value, how you live. I can do it. I feel very confident in knowing what you like and what you dislike. Why? Because you are not the unicorn that you think you are. You are who you surround yourself with. And before you even say, like, Pastor, are we only supposed to have Christian friends? Pastor, Paul tells us to be in the world, but not of the world. How are we supposed to do that? Like, how are we to share our faith if all we're doing is surrounding ourselves with church people? All fantastic questions. Number 1, that assumes you're sharing your faith. So here's what I love to do. When people push back and I say, listen, who you surround yourself with matters, and they're like, are you telling me that I shouldn't be around non-Christian friends? I often want to go, okay, I'm assuming then you're sharing your faith. So I want you to introduce me to your non-Christian friends, and I want to ask them how you're doing with sharing your faith. And if they say to me, I didn't know he loves Jesus, I didn't know she loved Jesus, I didn't know they went to church, like, I want to go, you just said, how are we to share our faith? I'm assuming that you're sharing your faith here, but here's number 2. I am not saying, please hear me, I am not saying that we don't have non-Christian friends. We absolutely do. We should have friends that don't believe the same way we do. I'm just saying that your closest friends, who you go to for advice, who you seek counsel from, better be strong followers of Jesus. Because in those moments, when you're at your weakest, you need people who you can surround yourself with that will point you to Jesus. And then let me get even more practical. Parents, I got my 11-year-old in here. I got the other 2 kids in the back. You should really, really, really care about who your kids hang out with. Yes, your young kids, but even your older kids. So much so, and I'm gonna say this, and I kind of mean it, but you should even be a part of the picking process of your kids' friends. You should care deeply about who your kids' really close friends are. Like, I know that sounds crazy, but if we are the sum total of our 5 closest friends, don't you think that they are gonna be the sum total of their 5 closest friends? You should really care. And here's why I'm so passionate about this. I know this is maybe crazy for some of you. I was a youth pastor for about 4 years. And I remember I would sit in meetings with parents who would ask me something like, how did my kid wander so far from the faith? Like, I can't believe that my kid did ... And they would look at me and go, that's not my kid. Like, how did they get here? How did we get to this point? 2 things. As lovingly and as kindly as I possibly could say, For some of them, maybe not all, but for some of them, I would say, I don't think you made Jesus and the church the priority that you think you did. And two, I don't know if you cared about who your kids were hanging out with. Because the ones that I know your kid was hanging out with, I know what they were doing on the weekends. I know who your kid was dating. I know what they talked like. I know how they treated other people. We should absolutely care about who our kids are hanging out with. I'm not saying that we should all go live in a monastery out in the woods, although there are some times in my life that sounds great. Here's what I am saying. If God wanted the people of the promised land removed because he didn't want the Israelites to be surrounded by the idolatry of their culture, maybe we should give more thought to who we surround ourselves with. Okay? But it's not just who that matters, it's also the what. Here's number 4, what we prioritize. If I haven't stepped on any toes yet, I'm probably going to now, so here we go. I think many, and I'm in the church, have our priorities wrong. I think many of us have our priorities wrong. Like the highest priority of our lives is to know Jesus and make him known. Everything else, are there other priorities in your life? 100%, absolutely. But the highest priority, the foundation of your life that everything else is centered on should be knowing Jesus and making him known. Every decision you make should be under the lens of that is your priority. When you choose where I'm gonna live, what job I'm gonna have, who I'm gonna marry, where I'm gonna go to, it should be under the foundation. Are there other parts of the conversation? Sure. But the priority, the highest priority should be knowing Jesus and making him known. Like moms and dads, let me just ask you a question. What do you think your highest priority as a mom and dad are? And if the answer is anything other than helping your kids know and follow Jesus, I think your priorities are wrong. And then my second question is, how are we doing? Young people, let me ask you a question. What is the highest priority of your life? And if anything else is other than to follow Jesus and make him known, I think your priorities are messed up. Empty nesters, what do you think the highest priority of your life should be? To know and follow Jesus and to make him known. Like there are a lot of aspects of life that I love. Like I love watching sports. I love watching my kids play ball. I love reading. There's nothing better than being in a library reading a good book for me. I love riding my bike, although I don't get to do it near as much as I want to. I love keeping up with friends on social media. I do. But what is your highest priority? And not just what would you say your highest priority is, what would your friends say your highest priority is? If I were to go and ask them, what is your highest priority? What would they say? It's just a question I've been pondering this week. Like I love the other priorities that I have right now. Like my highest priority to know Jesus and to make him known. I have some other priorities. My marriage to Caroline, raising my 3 boys, and I love it. Pastoring this church, I love it. I love getting to disciple other people. But man, if my highest priority isn't to know Jesus and make him known, when things happen in my life, when chaos comes my way, my world is gonna come crumbling down and I'm gonna start making decisions that I have no business making. And it's because the priority of my life isn't to know Jesus and make him known. What's the priority of your life? The only priority that will never leave you, the only priority that will never change is Jesus. I just wonder if we have our priorities a little messed up. See, and here's the truth about priorities. As Israel is entering and conquering the promised land, and we see it here in Joshua chapter 11, it's easy for us to sit back and think, why does God just not like all these other people? Like, why does it seem like he's always punishing them? And if you have that thought, I don't know if you know the entire story of the Bible. Because if you know anything about Israel's history, when they start to turn away from God, when they start to rebel, they encounter punishment too. Have you read the book of Judges? Right after this book, Joshua then Judges. The opening of Judges says, everyone did what was right in their own eyes. I mean, they had forgotten all about what God had done in the book of Joshua. Like you would think that if we read the book of Joshua and you read about like conquering Jericho and Ai and Gibeonites and all these things, you would go, how could they forget? The very next book is about Israel forgetting. And if you know anything about the book of Judges, it is bad. Over and over and over again. So not convinced? What about when the Assyrians come in and attack Israel? Like they take them into exile. They make them leave their land. This promised land that they were finally given, the Assyrians come in and make them leave. And then after that, the Babylonians come into Judah and they make them leave. Like if you know the Bible, it's just over and over and over again. God wants us to live for him. He wants us to focus less on us and more on him. And when we start focusing less on him, that's when sin creeps in. That's when all these little things that we go, man, that's not really impacting me. That's not really like causing me to sin. I want to go, gosh, I think it is more than you realize. And these are just a few of a long list of areas that if we're not careful will change us, fill us, and mold us into something that doesn't look more like Jesus. This is why God cares so much about who Israel surrounds itself with. And if we honor him, Joshua chapter 11 is going to end like this. There's a reward. Look at verse 23. So Joshua took the entire land, in keeping with all the Lord had told Moses. Joshua then gave it an inheritance to Israel according to their tribal allotments. After this, the land had rest from war. 2 words. Stay with me for these 2 words and I'm done. Inheritance and rest. Inheritance is about being a part of a family. Like one of my favorite images of the New Testament when it comes to inheritance is this word adoption, like that we are adopted, we are inherited, like we have an inheritance. We are adopted into God's family. Although we might fall short, although we might miss the mark, this is not what gives us access to the family, right? When my kids fall short for a day, for a moment, I don't kick them out of the family. No. The inheritance is still theirs. And the inheritance, it brings rest. You guys know that feeling at the end of the day, like when you've worked really, really, really hard, you've had that exhausting day, but you've like done really good work and you like you've been longing for this all day. Like I just want to lay down, I just want my head to hit the pillow, and then your head hits the pillow and you finally kind of like make that like rest. Like it's a good rest. Like you've done exactly what you wanted to do that day. Like you have been wrung out, but you've honored the Lord and you get rest. Joshua is finally getting rest after accomplishing what God had for him. But here's what I'm afraid of, is that some won't get this inheritance, won't get this rest because we are here not caring about the sin that we are entangled in. Like I started the sermon, so many of us, we just go, it's no big deal. Like there's grace, so I'll just keep living the way that I want to live. Here's the really great news. Sin, it doesn't have to be what defines you. It doesn't have to be your life. The lust, the greed, the pride, the anger, the selfishness, the lack of love, like rest and inheritance can be yours. But only Jesus can give it to you. Like only Jesus can give you the inheritance that you really need. Only Jesus can give you the rest that you really need. Because apart from him, you're always going to be spinning your wheels. You're always going to be a little bit tired. See, the lie that the Western world has bought into over and over and over again is that I can mostly live for me and I can partly live for Jesus. But what the Bible teaches, no, we're all in for Jesus. Like he gets every aspect of my life. How I talk, Jesus gets access to that. What I watch, Jesus gets access to that. Who I'm friends with, Jesus gets a say in that. Over and over and over, like Jesus gets an opportunity. What I prioritize, it should be Jesus. And if those are my priorities, inheritance and rest are ours. So this is the beautiful thing about the good news of Jesus. Rest and inheritance, family. Listen, it's Mother's Day, and you might think, man, this is a crazy sermon to be preaching on Mother's Day. One of the things I love about my wife and about my mom is they have constantly throughout my life pointed me to a bigger picture of who Jesus is. Like they've shown me what true family looks like. And some of you may be entering the room this morning and like when you think of family, like you have this really broken picture because that's what your family is. But can I just point you to the scripture? That what really means to be a part of a family is what we get to see in the scriptures. What really means to have inheritance is what we get from King Jesus. The rest that I know you need can only come from him, not from continuing to try to do things on your own. So this Mother's Day, instead of going, man, my family's broken, we're a little messed up, maybe this picture of God's family would just give you a little taste, a little glimpse of what your inheritance can be as a believer in King Jesus, what rest you can have as a follower of King Jesus. Will you pray with me?